Welcome to Event Marketing Redefined. Thank you, as always, for taking an hour out of your day to sit with us and talk event marketing. So, cool show today. Christina and I were just joking. We're going to get granular on a granular topic, which I think it is true. So, it's content creation and repurposing for trade show campaigns. I love this topic because I see too often people twofold: A, not creating enough content for their show, and then B, not using their actual event in person to create content for then further repurposing and marketing efforts. And with me to discuss today is Christina Piedlow. She is the president CEO of TPG Trade Show and Event Marketing. Christina, it's our second time talking on the show. I had you live at Exhibitor Live, so this is cool. Thanks for showing up.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone who's joined us.
Yeah, we have a good group today. You've created a good draw. Look at you. So that's awesome.
I've
Nice.
tried. I've been promoting the podcast on
Awesome.
LinkedIn. So,
Hey, that's how you got to get the people here. So first of all, tell us TPG Trade Show and Event Marketing. Like, tell us what you all do.
oh, yeah. So, we've been in business for about 30 years now. We are a boutique event marketing agency. We really specialize in event and trade show marketing and creating the activations around it and the campaigns around all of the events that we service.
You know what I love about you saying that's trade show marketing, right? Like, I think people forget at times that trade shows is sales and marketing. It is marketing. It is a function of marketing. So you even just saying that, it often gets lost in translation in our industry as if it's like just this booth building and event type thing, but it is marketing. So it's
Yeah, it
cool that that's where your
absolutely is. And
focus
I
is.
think I think a lot of event marketers dedicate most of their budget to just getting the booth
Yeah.
up and down, right? There's so much around that in the stress of the install and the dismantle and all of the properties that go into it is almost enough for some people sometimes. So it's easy to overlook all of the marketing aspects that really need to go into a trade show to make it effective.
It is. So, okay. First question is for you, why is it important, right? For businesses to create, we'll call it a content strategy for their trade shows and for their events.
Well, when we look at events, we're always looking at how do we maximize engagement? How do we maximize ROI, increase our brand impressions, get our story across? And the way to do that is through content. So there are a lot of benefits to adopting a content-centric approach to trade show campaigns that includes audience engagement and education, creating that pre-show hype, right, around your campaign to maximize booth traffic into your booth. And lead generation is a great opportunity as well. You can collect leads even before the event even starts. And if you do it effectively, then you know as soon as somebody comes into your booth, once you scan their badge, exactly where they are within the purchasing funnel. So if you can create a comprehensive content strategy before the event even happens, you're really setting yourself up for success and making sure that you're engaging your attendees in an effective way before then. Allows you the opportunity to create brand authority, to tell your story, tell your message, to create the relationships with attendees before they get to the show floor, and then to also collect some data well in advance of the show.
Yeah, I want to go into a little bit about the content strategy and maybe ways of like beginning to formulate it. But one of the notes I had as you were talking, I was just thinking to myself, like when I kind of broke out my thoughts on this and I'm thinking about content, I think about the show and then I think being prepared for the show with content, right? And I always think like it is about engagement. It is about storytelling with your content,
Yeah.
right? You're using it to engage the customer. And that's mostly why people are at trade shows. So if you don't have really good content, it'll be difficult to engage your customer. And then the second piece is that you're always trying to tell your customer a story about you, about the problem you solve, about your value proposition, or maybe about a philosophy that you have in that space with them. So I think the importance of a content strategy going into a show is really, really vital for those reasons. So tell me a little bit, like just in that singular section of saying, okay, I have a trade show coming up and we need to come up with a content strategy. How do you sort of start somebody off? What does that look like? What should somebody be thinking about?
I mean, this may sound trivial, but we always start with what is your objective for the show and who is your
Yeah.
audience and what are their pain points, right? So setting up really a good foundation of what exactly it is that you're hoping to achieve from the event with strong KPIs, setting SMART goals. Are you familiar with SMART goals?
Yeah.
Yeah. So making sure that they're attainable, that they're realistic, that they're timely, that they make sense for the show itself, and coming up with strong KPIs that support it will then help you determine the content strategy that goes into it. Where do you need to focus to make sure that your objectives are being met? What types of content should you be focusing on to make sure that your objectives are being met? And then what is the message that you're hoping to get across to your attendees? And that's important because once you really have that message and that educational element around what you're hoping to impart to those attendees, you can develop a campaign around it with a theme for your event to make it just a well-rounded, more engaging experience for them. When we're looking at content calendars, really fleshing out what those objectives are is important.
Yeah. It makes me think. I actually wrote a post this morning on LinkedIn about concepts, themes, narrative, and ideas, and how those four things, or one of the four, two of the four, three or four of the four, really need to come before exhibit design comes.
Yeah.
And it actually, with what you're saying, it's all marketing. It goes into now marketing, into content strategy, which will then allow you. It's like, people want to talk content. They're like, oh, I want to have a hologram, or, oh, I want to have this. And it's like, well, you don't really need to go into a set item. You need to have that strategy first. Like you're saying, what are the objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? Who is the customer? Then you can start backing into like, how do we now go execute this to get it in front of our customer?
Right. And does that hologram serve that purpose? And does that hologram
Yes.
really make sense for your brand in terms of the context of the show?
Yeah, because people tend to ask questions like, oh, what's new? Oh, what are people doing that's new? And I do think there's some value to saying like, oh, this is new. Let's try to incorporate it some way, a new technology or something. There's some value there. But if you're not doing the front loading work that you're talking about, which is the strategy, I think you can just completely miss, and you can get lost in the sense of, almost like a parlor trick maybe per se, or, you're just doing it just to do it.
Absolutely. And having those objectives not only meet I think in the context of an event, we're always like, okay, how do we make this event successful? But then looking at it from, a bird's eye view is how do I, in the context of my brand and the objectives of my organization, create a marketing strategy around this event, right? There's a bigger message to be had as well. It's not just about going into that event either.
Do you see more people creating the campaign around the event and then carrying it through, or attaching the event and trade show to a current campaign that's going on, that's already existent through the marketing department of that company?
Oh, that's a great question. Usually the latter, I would say. It depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are, I see both. I'm not going to lie. I
Yeah.
see both of it
Yeah.
being done.
I think so
Sometimes
too.
it's just we're going to attach this to the marketing campaign, and maybe that marketing campaign doesn't really serve the audience that you're going to for the trade
Yeah.
show, right? Maybe that marketing campaign is just like they're the assets you have, so you're not going to change them. You don't have the resources to change them. You don't have the time or the energy to really
Yeah.
make it happen. So I'm not going to change it for the trade show. Or sometimes on the flip side, I'm only going to create a campaign around this particular event and not really think of it in the context of my organization and what's going on. So I see it both ways, and both ways, can be misses depending on how you execute them, or they can be amazing.
Yep. No, for sure. I mean, I think it's something that an event marketer has to be considering, which is what's going on inside of our company. Is there some major objective with a major campaign that it fits our audience? Just latch yourself to it. Just
Yeah.
latch yourself to that thing. I mean, we have that all the time with our clients as we get designing. They're like, we have this going on. This is the campaign, and we're just jumping on the back of the ship. And for us, we're always like, excellent, because now we have a theme. Now we have a concept. Now we have a direction already, and you just attach. When it needs to be created, is when you really have to sort of dig deep, and you have to say, like, let's build something here and let's cater it to this audience.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think sometimes, we see it a lot easier in a B2C space, right? Share a Coke
Yes.
campaign, right?
It's like everything's easier in B2C. It's just like everything's easier for some
Yeah,
reason.
it's sometimes just easier to bring it to life in that context because it's such a big, enormous national campaign as it is. So
Yeah.
sometimes that can be a little bit of a struggle in a B2B environment, but it can be done and it can be done effectively.
Yeah. I always push people B2B. B2B needs to be more fun. B2B needs to be more personalized, more, like the people in B2B are the same as the consumer in B2C. It's still
Right.
people. You're selling to a person, right? So I agree with that completely. Christina, so let's talk pre-show specifically, right? Let's do that.
Mhm.
Because I think that's always a topic. Like we get that question. People always like, how do we stand out? How do we get people to the booth? How do we, right? That is a how question from clients of ours all the time and just in general. So where are event marketers missing the mark on pre-show content and pre-show strategy?
Yeah, well, we touched on a few things already, right? One of them is not having a strategy or having content
Mm,
to purpose before the event, right? Because we're so focused on the actual event and then sometimes overlook it. But if we are talking about those who are engaging, a lot of times we miss the mark in by not having interactive elements, a chance for attendees to engage beforehand, lack of personalization, right? By creating personalized email communications,
yeah.
personalized comments on social media. You really connect with your audience in a way that makes them feel valued, in a way that makes them feel like they're connected to the brand. Having a content variety, right? Sometimes we're looking at just email communications, and that's coming through a sponsorship, right? Because it's very hard to get the attendee list now without going through the show organizers. So only engaging in that way, not having webinars or podcasts or social media content to rely on or videos to share really can do you a disservice. But I think the biggest miss is just timing, right? Not
Mm,
building in enough time into your production timeline to make sure that you're hitting the folks prior to the event in a nice cadence that makes sense for them and really structuring that cadence around it. I think there's too often times where our content has to go through legal, it's got to go through a bunch of marketing folks that all have to sign off on it. And all of that takes time. And by the time you get done with it,
yeah.
there's not a lot of time to deploy. And deploying can sometimes take time within your organization, depending on
Yes.
if it's got to go to another department or if another vendor has to take that piece of it on. So really building the timing into your production timeline is pretty vital. I think we miss the mark on that a lot. And then finally, accessibility, making sure that all of our content is accessible to our entire audience. And this is not just for pre-show. This is, at show, post-show as well, making sure that the content specifically is a legible font, is a user friendly experience, is optimized for mobile, is if you're having a website that people are going to in advance, that is built out in a very user friendly way, just making everything as accessible to your audience as possible is really important. And there are a number of different websites that you can go to kind of see if your content is meeting that mark. Are your colors legible to your audience? And there's even AI, I think, built in. I know in my emails, I get accessibility notifications all the time through Microsoft. Like,
Yeah.
you can make this more accessible, right? So thinking about that as you're building your content, I think, Matt, like 20% of people are dyslexic, which
Wow.
is like, that's crazy to me, right? So you think of 1 in 5 people have some sort of additional need as they're viewing content. It's a staggering number. So it's something to really
Mm.
be mindful of as you are creating that content.
One of the things that you said in there that I want to touch on is essentially one of the battles I've seen is that the segmentation of departments inside big companies that are exhibiting. The events person, who's the event marketer, also has a whole marketing department that they have to go through just to get an email sent, just to get, you know what I mean? So all the things that they're trying to execute, it's weird because they're in charge of this event, and you have to market the event. You have to market your presence at the event. You have to be able to think like a marketer to execute the event, yet they got to work with marketing to get stuff done. Do you have any, I don't know, thoughts, experience, or advice to people that are maybe having a struggle? Because marketing's not worried about the event all the time. They got a whole thing going on nonstop. So I've seen that as like a little bit of a struggle for some companies having
It's
to
a
cross
big
work.
struggle. Well, and
Yeah.
it's not just that. It's, your social media team is going to be different as well. Like that, usually that's an entirely different department. So, yeah, do I have advice? Make friends, take them out to lunch, like get in good with those people, because when you do, you can ask for things quickly.
Yep.
They'll know, this is coming from you, and you're on an event timeline and it's got to happen. But also maybe create some templates that are
Mhm.
already kind of baked, right? That pass legal muster. And the only caveat I say with that is that can kind of, pigeonhole you a little bit in the tone and what you want to say to a specific audience, but at least it's a place to start where you know that there are some things that are already going to be approved. This language already passes
Yep.
muster, or take things from things that have already been approved through legal to make sure that that can go through a lot more easily.
Yeah. One thing it makes me think about is like what we were talking about earlier is like all of the planning, beginning with the end in mind, the objectives, all the stuff you try and put together. The more you have that together, and then the more time you give yourself, the easier it would be to work with the departments that you need things from to run an effective event. So if you're running last minute and then you're needing wonders done, it's going to be difficult
Right.
to happen. So, but if you're organized, if you have time, and again, event marketers do not always have time. Sometimes like, hey, go run this event. Hey, go get us here. So it doesn't always work.
It
What are
doesn't,
like
but I would
some
say, like, if I could to say to that is
Sure. No, do
just
it.
like outsource it,
Yeah.
outsource or delegate. Like there are people that do this, that like if you don't have the time to do it, it's okay to say, I need somebody else to do this for me just
Yeah.
to make my
I
event
agree.
more, productive and have a better ROI.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. What are like some effective content strategies? Let's just go trade show specific. What have you seen that's worked? Right? Like what are some things? Is it videos that were created that were run on LED walls? Is it just a theme that was concepted up that was implemented and then campaigns around that theme? What are some ideas for people, even if they're broad ideas, but what are just some ideas, some effective strategies with content for trade shows?
I think what works really well, I mean, LEDs are all the rage, and they really do get the message across if you've got effective video on them. I think that's a great,
Yeah.
it's a great start in terms of, getting your message out there and making it visible and impactful, right? If you have a great video producer, video content producer that can create something compelling, like a sizzle reel or just something interesting. I've seen Bear had at one of their events a humongous LED with just a big water wall on it. And it was so cool. It said, "Are you flooded with data?" Right? And it just was its message that really got across very well. Presentations work very, very well. You always see
Yep.
people when a presentation is done well with a professional presenter, you get people into the booth, you get them dedicated to your message for 5 to 7 minutes, and are able to then service whatever their needs are after the presentation itself. I've seen recently at AACC, Siemens did a sort of roving reporter type of a thing with throughout their booth. They had this enormous LED wall, and then a reporter was talking to different product experts within their booth, and they were through IMAG putting it on the LED wall. Say, hey, we're here at this part of the booth. Come join us. This is what I'm showing off. This is why it's so important. These are the pain points we're solving for. We'd love to
Mhm.
talk to you. And I thought that
Mhm.
worked really well as well.
Nice. With the video wall and any kind of technology, touch screens, stands, things like that. I always ask the question, if we're talking about it internally here and executing things, we always say why. Like,
Yep.
what are you putting on it? Like, yes, the video wall's great. Yes, the touchscreen is great, but what are you doing there? What's going on? Because sometimes people get infatuated. They're like, we got to have these video walls. It's video wall, video wall. And you're like, what are you putting on it? You don't even have content. So you're going to make this whole thing about this video wall, but you don't have content. And I don't even understand how you're engaging somebody. So if you had some awesome campaign, right, and it mirrored up, or you had this idea based on your product or your service, and you pitch that along with the video wall, and I would be like, that sounds incredible. That's engaging. Like, let's do it. But if you don't, can't just have it just to have it. The presentations, I love. I'm a huge fan of them. Huge fan
Yeah.
of engaging, good presentations. So I love that you said that, because I think that sometimes slides under the radar when you hear content and you hear strategies. You know what I mean? It
Well,
doesn't
and
get
I think
talked about enough.
for a long time, people had this like, presentation. I gotta listen to a PowerPoint, but they're gonna be done so well. And they're really building
Yes.
up
Oh, yes, they
momentum.
can.
Yeah, they're really
Yep.
building up momentum again within the trade show space. And I think there's a good reason for that because they are tried and
Yeah.
true and they really
Yeah.
do get that message across. And now it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint presentation. It can be, you know,
Yep.
a really
Way
powerful
more than that.
video. Yeah, it can be so much more than that. I do have to say though, I'm always a fan of professional presenters over
Mhm.
people from the
Yeah.
actual organization, just because they're
Yeah.
usually more compelling and engaging.
I think if you're going to do presentations and you're going to even demonstrations, like if you have a product, right?
Yes.
Like make it, I'm not saying make it a spectacle to make it a spectacle, but make it fun, make it engaging, make it something more, whether it's like you have a scheduled one every hour on the hour and you do something along with it and it's live streamed and it's just different ideas to draw attention and bring to light kind of what's happening. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you have to fulfill driving value, right? I mean, of course, at the end of the day.
I often
Um,
hear though, like, oh, I tried a presentation, it didn't work. And there's a number of pitfalls that you can get into if you're going to create a presentation. I have a tried and true, Matt, like a tried and true 5 Asians that you should do. So if I could share, it's, if you're creating a presentation, you want to look at communication. What is your message? What is your story? How are you communicating it? Elevation, make sure that your presenter is elevated in a way that draws attention. Illumination, light your space in a way that is compelling. Amplification, and I forgot my last station.
Communication is the message, elevation, right, for the speaker,
Yep.
illumination of the
Amplification,
space, amplification.
elevation. I don't remember my last station, but those
Yeah.
4 will work. And it really does matter, like, how you're telling your story, right?
Yeah.
Making sure you have a good content writer for how that
Yep.
story is coming across.
And I think for, those type things, like I give an example is like I have a friend of mine, multiple friends inside one company, and essentially they have like an HVAC fan system and it has a ton of value proposition to it compared to their competitors. And part of the
Sure.
value proposition is the quick setup. So we were talking about trade show and I'm like, let's build this
Set
bad
it up.
boy.
Yeah, build
Let's
it.
build it. Let's install it into a wall or something. And I'm like, let's make a spectacle. Let's have a stopwatch. Let's time it. Like, come bet that you can't install this thing in X period of time. So like you have to be thinking of like presentation. Can you gamify it? Right. I've always said that. Can
Yes.
you gamify it? Can you get people to come in and interact and do something with it? And it's just stretching the boundaries of always thinking about engaging your customer. It can't be boring. It's got to be fun. It has to be fully engaging. And that's how you will drive people.
I love that. And I think in terms of content, right, offering them a takeaway at the end is really
Yeah.
also very important. Not, I mean, swag is great. And I think that's important. Having a giveaway strategy, having somebody come in and activate
Mhm.
that brand ambassador, making sure people are coming in and actually doing the activity itself. But what is the takeaway? Does somebody get a thank you message at the end, or do they get like a video of them actually installing that HVAC
Yep.
system, or a picture of them having, succeeded doing the
Yeah.
challenge? Something that they leave with at the end of the day, they look at their email and they're like, oh my goodness, that brand cared about me and
Yeah.
I got to do this cool thing and I've got a takeaway from it.
I think so. I think that's such a good point for us to kind of skip around a little bit, which is like the end of some of this stuff, right? Because we're talking about content strategy for an event. A lot of it we've discussed is like how to plan and strategize to go create content to utilize at the show. But then you need some form of follow-up. What are they taking home? What are they leaving with? What is it? What does follow-up look like afterwards? And it should be done with content, with giveaways. What kind of touch points are there? What are your thoughts on creative ways of after, like once you've utilized content at a show and then now you need to reach back out to people? Like, what does your follow-up look like? Can you use content for that?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you've captured data and metrics on site, right? You know who
Yeah.
all of these attendees are and you know where they are in the purchasing funnel. So for, creating that strategy afterwards, your hot leads need to get immediately sent to your sales team for immediate follow-up. All of those leads need to be put into your CRM for a nurturing campaign. And you want to, as soon as somebody comes into your booth, after they leave, you want to be able to send them a thank you message again with some sort of takeaway from it. But I would say, within 2 weeks after the show, you want to make an offer to anyone that visited your booth. This can be a coupon, a white paper, a takeaway from the activity, even something as simple as a chance to learn more or set up a time to chat. But ideally, you want to take the community that you created within that event and keep that message going. And that can be offering them a webinar. Maybe you follow it up with, hey, we talked to you about all the people that you talked to about this product. We're doing a product webinar and offering, a 10% coupon on it afterwards. Like, come join us. We want to talk to you about it, etc. But create that community afterwards. And then again, filter the rest into those nurturing campaigns and then time your communications to their purchasing timeframe.
I've talked a little bit about this, but is the personalization on the back end, like all the things you're saying, like those are just such you like it's a must do. You must be organized in that follow up. Otherwise, you've wasted everything in the front.
Right.
And I've always told people like, how can you dial in that data and what's happening on the show and on the show floor in real time to be able to personalize your follow up with what you're asking people. Like when sales get a list of 40 hot leads, 100 hot leads, or actual really good conversation, do they have the personalization from those discussions? Or are they just calling saying, hey, it's Megan from X, we met you on the floor, I'm following up, want to see, like, that's boring. It's, can you follow up with
Totally.
personalization from the show?
Which is why it's important to ask those questions on the show floor. Have a survey of your attendees. What products were they interested in? Maybe you've done booth
Yeah.
tracking and you know that they spent 5 minutes at this particular part of your booth,
Yep.
right? Or maybe you've just asked them what they're most interested in. There are a lot of different ways to collect that kind of feedback. But if you're savvy, you can easily find that information out about your attendees and then be very, very deliberate and strategic with how you're going to follow up with them. To follow that up, also think about like what performs well for them, what performed well
Yeah.
at your event, and then use those specific key messages to then tie that into the content after the event as well.
I like that. So what about utilizing the event to actually create content? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome user generated
Yeah.
content at the event. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I saw done really well at HR Tech? I was at HR Tech and I don't remember the company that did this. This was not a client of mine, but they had almost like a roving reporter on site. And they were like, we're just going to ask you 3 questions. And they asked me something about, advice to my younger self, What do I hope for from my employer? Something to that effect, right? Because it was HR. And they created all of this wonderful user generated content from their attendees. They put it up on the screen in their booth as people were talking about it. And then they took little snippets of it and created these little video pieces that they used on social media, that they used in their email campaigns afterwards to say, hey, look, this is what people are looking for. This is what we are solving for. Listen to, so and so say this is what they're looking for from an HR program. We offer that solution. And I just thought it was so smart. The whole thing was so smart, and it was all user generated content on site. But yeah, I think that's great.
You have to leverage being there. You have to leverage it. It is in a way like thought leadership. Like you have to leverage your presence, leverage the industry, leverage the conversation that's happening. Quick reminder, anybody have any questions, anything with content of anything we've discussed that you have specifically for you that maybe Christina and myself can answer and sort of like dive into for you? We'd be happy to do that. Just put details in the Q&A. So one thing I've seen recently that I'm seeing is like, I don't know if it was at SaaStr or if it was at HubSpot Inbound, but there were people utilizing those cardboard signs. So where they write something on a cardboard sign and they hold it up and they stand there. So they're just in the exhibit hall with a cardboard sign that says something like a message, right? And they're just holding it up like you see on Facebook, Instagram, where people hold up a sign, right?
Yeah.
But then what's crazy is it is out of the ordinary. It is unique. It is different. It's not really common at a trade show. But then they're like taking pictures and running video of the conversations that they're having as people are passing. And then that's getting repurposed into content. So something so simple, but that message on a cardboard was sparking conversation.
So a question about that, was that the show organizer that did that?
No,
No, it was an exhibitor.
Either like an exhibitor or attendee or somebody like that, you know what I mean? Like holding up a message, and then they recorded themselves, but the whole point of that was to create content. It was not to stand there with a cardboard box and hold up a sign. It was a pop culture style, campaign. Way of garnering attention. Yes, absolutely. I thought it was pretty smart. I didn't think it created enough value. I thought it was just kind of an attention grabbing thing, but I don't see the value that's coming to the customer from it other than if you just think it's cool. That was the only miss I felt that it had, right?
Right.
Question here from Agnes. Agnes, thank you for asking a question. What's your favorite game activity to attract visitors to your booth for a B2B event? Game or activity?
My favorite, I like cause marketing opportunities. So we do this wonderful charity wall and have done it for a couple of clients now where, and it's all mobile led. So on your mobile device, you can access a QR code and then answer a couple questions and or play a little game on your phone. And then when you do, the award is that it gives you a donation to a specific charity, but we have it tied to this big kind of LED wall where different tiles are revealed. It's a mosaic LED wall. Different tiles are revealed anytime somebody does it. So at the end, you can see just how many people have donated to the cause. You've learned something as an attendee from having done those couple of questions or playing that little game on your phone, and then they're to give back afterwards. So I love that as an option. I also love trivia games. We did this wonderful spoof off of, what's the one where they held the suitcases? It's not Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but like the suitcase game, the girls hold or whatever.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. They had girls up on it was almost like a triangular stage, and they all had a suitcase with money.
Yeah, Deal or No Deal. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Nice. Yes, there we go. Got it.
Deal or No Deal. So we did a spoof off of that. That was enormous fun and gathered all kinds of crowds as well. There's lots of things you can do. Spoofs on games that exist that do really well are always a great way to go. But yeah, there's so many different fun interactive games. But those are a couple of my favorites so far.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good question, Agnes. I would say the one, it's not really a game. I do love any form of competition because I think people love competition. If you can make it fun, kind of healthy and get people there, I think it's always a good way of doing it. I think inside your exhibit space, and we did this at one point, we ran this podcast inside our exhibit space. So it's not really a game, but it is, I guess you call it like an activity. You call it like a bit of an activation inside your space. So either running a podcast or hosting panel discussions. You don't have to have anything to host panel. You build a small stage inside your booth, host panel discussions and film it and just get really smart people to come in and have really great conversations. What I love about that is you can film it, you can repurpose it. It garners attention on the floor. You're carrying industry conversation with really smart people. And that's one of my favorite for
I
sure.
think, Matt, what you did really well at that is that you had not only industry experts, but also just event marketers who were attendees. So you had exhibitors plus attendees, and you were talking to the actual people on the show floor. And so you got this wide variety of a number of different people from a lot of different viewpoints. I thought that worked really well for you at Exhibitor.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was fun. And we weren't really sure how it was going to go. We thought it would be the most difficult to get the CTSM event marketing people to come on. But we ended up getting a lot of people to come on, which was awesome. I had such good conversations. Like, what's keeping you up at night? What are you worried about? What are the skills you're hoping to acquire? Like, what's problems you're having that maybe I could connect you with somebody else that's maybe solved it? And then having people like yourself, right? Having people like Dave Wallens and his experience in the industry, Jason Weddle, my buddy from Hamilton exhibits, right? Like talking about what's happening, sustainability. Like, yes, it was cool. It was good to just kind of have that discussion. And I was just shocked by how many people came by and were like, what are you guys, what are you doing over here? What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we would scare people with politics questions when they came up. We would be like, oh, we're having a political conversation. It was like a running joke. And people would be like, I don't want to talk about that. We're like, no, we're not talking about politics. We're just kidding. So, but it was fun. Question from Robert. Robert, great question. I love this. Everybody keep them coming if you have certain ones. Robert says, great knowledge share. When does it make sense to live stream from an event when people watching cannot interact with the live speakers? Specific. I like that. So when does it make sense to live stream at your event when the people watching cannot interact with live speakers? So I don't know how you feel about this, Christina, but I would say the example I gave previously, Robert, was that we have a company that we're connected to. They're a manufacturer, they make a product, and we were going to do live demonstrations of the assembly of their product because the assembly, being quick, fast, easy, and more efficient than all their competitors, was a value proposition. We didn't need an interaction from a live stream, but would have loved for them to live stream it so people at home could watch, and then we could market and promote it on the back end, saying, hey, do you want to learn about the quick assembly of A, B, and C? We're going to do demonstrations. I would also add to that, you have to live stream when you have an audience to live stream. So if you don't have an audience to live streaming really doesn't make any sense. So how active is the company, the community in that space is what I would say for there.
To piggyback off that, you can always have somebody from your team serving as a moderator. So even if they can't ask questions directly to the panelist, that moderator can either answer questions for them or
that's a great point.
Yeah, or can say, hey, listen, we're taking all of your questions. We're going to reach out after the show. We will get them answered for you. Thank you so much for being here. So I never think live streaming is bad, provided, as you said, that you do have the audience. And Kevin had asked if it's an effective way to engage the show with an online audience. Yes, absolutely. It's a way to expand your reach, right? So that your show is not only within the confines of the exhibit hall, but moves on into that online space as well.
I don't know how you feel about this. We have another question from Brenda, which we'll get to, but I think any way that you can extend the presence and the event, whether it's after or during, and spread it, whether it's with a viral moment, whether it's with an Instagrammable pictures, imagery, a place where people want to stop by, whether it's a live demonstration, virtual, that you can then go after a whole nother audience that's not there. I am always for that. What is your reach? How can you create more? And how can you maximize 3 to 4 days at a show?
Absolutely.
I'm always for that.
And then since we're talking about repurposing, when you do post those pieces of content, what worked well? And then can you repurpose those pieces, right? Did you get a
Yeah.
lot of comments that you then want to turn into a blog post? Did you get a lot of comments that you then, or
Oh, that's
suggestions
really
that,
smart. I love
you
that.
know, yeah. So there's always different ways to take what it is that you've posted or that you've put out into the world and then turn it into something else if you have the right creative team.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing you say with that is that when you do the right activities and those things, it affords you these other opportunities to piggyback off of it. And if you're thinking like a marketer, you're constantly using it to leverage, to extend the life of the event, right? To just create your touch points with your clients. Question from Brenda, which is, this is always Brenda. This is a question that in some form or fashion, we always get in different ways. And I love answering it. So you said, when giving out swag, how much is too much? I will let Christina take it.
Okay, so I would say you want to be looking at your cost per lead. What is your average cost per lead coming in, and tier your swag strategy to those people that are hot versus, warm and then cold leads. You
Yep.
don't want to just be giving out, you know, everything to everyone. And you want to
Yes.
be very deliberate with how much you're spending on a lead that, they have to be worth your company's investment in them. So, one way to just make it fair for all is to do a giveaway, right? You can just do a drawing and a giveaway, and then it's fair for all. But if you really want to make those people who are going to be investing in your company feeling like you're invested in them, spend a little bit more money on them than you would on somebody who is, just walking by and trying to grab a trinket. How much you want to spend on them really comes down to your data and your metrics from your previous shows, right? Your ROI and what you've learned and gleaned based on who has come to your event and who has then decided to make a purchase after that. So I would say run those numbers and determine to you what makes the most sense in terms of an investment into that person.
I love the cost thought on that. Brenda, what the two thoughts I have is, I do think that sustainability is a real conversation in the events industry. There's tons of waste. Giveaways is a ton of waste. There's so much crap floating around. I have two thoughts. One is sustainable, and the other one is like, give away meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
And that is to your key ideal customers, right? Like with what Christina said, like, you might have to have some like basic small things for people, but you need to understand like who, we'll say ICP. I hate using like acronyms for people, but like who's your ideal audience at that show? And you should have something meaningful, worthwhile, that they like really genuinely would want, or that they would appreciate getting. Just giving away junk to give away junk to have something, to me, is a waste of time, money, and energy. I would
Resources.
give away.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd
But
give
I
away
would
stuff that
also
matters.
say, like, nobody gets anything for free, period. Like, you don't get a stress ball without giving me your information. That's like, I feel strongly about that. Like, I don't believe in just giving something away. They either have to
Mhm.
participate in the activity, they have to scan their badge, they have to do something to earn
Yeah.
that piece of whatever it is that you're giving away. And then also, Matt, to your point, I don't know if you have kids, but like my kids get so much junk, plastic trinkets, plastic toys, plastic things that we're always throwing away. Like junk is not good. Like I always try to deter people from giving away the junk, just like you had said. Like there's so much waste. So make it
Mm.
meaningful to your attendees.
Yeah, I say, Brenna, one of the examples on both of that is that when we exhibited, we gave away what we call like a staycation. It was a 2-night stay at a like high-end boutique hotel, within like 2 hours of where you live. And it was in this raffle. But in order to get in that raffle, I mean, it was like a stay, it was dinners, breakfast, all these things included. You had to have this certain conversation with us. You had to answer a question. You had to put a hotel card key into a box that gave us data. So we were getting things and engaging and listening to the customer, but also entering them in to win something that people genuinely wanted. So they were more than willing to have a decent conversation with you.
I noticed, Brenda, that you had said that you gave away tape measures and a multi-purpose tool and Post-its with a logo on it. I don't know what your industry is, but I can already feel it by the giveaways that you were giving away as, something in construction or something in that nature. And I love that. I love that your giveaways were centered around your brand and kind of go with your message. That's another thing, is think about your brand when you're creating a giveaway strategy and what makes sense for the brand. If you're a technology company, maybe you're not giving away a tape measure, right? So yeah, so I love that you had just written that. That's really clever.
So this is an interesting question. We're on the question run here. This is an interesting question from Gene. It says, what about creating sales tools with trade show content? So what about creating sales tools with trade show content? Christina, I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Jean, for that question. I think particularly when it comes to presentations or one-to-one demos or any sort of interactive, it is very easy to take that content and then repurpose it into a sales tool for the sales organization. And it's a great way to get some money potentially from the sales organization to help fund that interactive for the event as well. So if you're going to be creating an interactive that is a demonstration, think about how that might be repurposed so that the sales team can then take it out into the field and sell to customers that way. But that's a fantastic way. Or vice versa. If you've got a sales tool that has been successful for you in terms, maybe it's a demonstration site, maybe it is, a product walk around, you can repurpose that content for the trade show and turn it into a demo. Now, I hesitate when I say, repurpose the content. I don't mean just reuse the content. I really mean repurpose it, tailor it, invest in graphic design, invest in your content writer, your content producer, your video producer to help you recreate that particular piece of content for your target audience. So if it's, taking that sales tool and making it for a specific trade show or vice versa, you can repurpose it utilizing the right creative team to then create a tool that will work in another format.
Yeah, really good questions here. And Christina has a great answer. From Kevin, I like this question. It says, if you use a giveaway to get attendees to do something, what kinds of things would you want them to do? So I don't know how you feel about this, Christina, but I'm a firm believer in like mapping the experience of your attendee inside of your exhibit space. And it's not like something crazy that you have to do, but it's thinking, what does that interaction look like? So you're asking, like, what do you want them to do? Well, what is meaningful interaction, right? You obviously have to you're wanting to get data from it, right? You're wanting to learn about them. I always think it's wanting to open up conversation. That's how I always think about it, because the show floor can be a little cold. People are hesitant. They know you're trying to sell them. You're there to sell them. You've set up an exhibit space, but how can you get somebody talking? How can you get them into something fun, something interactive, something engaging that gets them talking about their problems, why they are there, what it is that they are seeking? So that's what I'm trying to get them to do. The way that you get them to do it, I think, really, really varies. And it depends on your product, your service, it depends on your theme. You could have something totally fun and off the wall. You could have something very pointed, very specific. But that's how I view that question. Christina, I don't know what your thoughts
No,
are.
I do. I call it the attendee journey. You call it mapping the experience, the attendee journey. What does that look like? And what are you hoping to glean? And that it all goes back to the objectives that you've set for the event itself. And so when you map out that journey, or you think about what it is that you're hoping to achieve from the attendees, your giveaway strategy should be centered around that in particular. And if there are multiple locations that you're hoping that attendee goes, think about how you want to structure your giveaways based on how many stations that they go to, right? And I say stations, maybe it's just not stations. Maybe it's you want them to see a presentation and then go talk to somebody, right? That's not necessarily stations. But in that journey, what are the places that you need them to go? And then mapping your giveaway strategy around that and making sure, no matter what, that you're collecting data from them.
I would, so I love that the way you kind of describe that, but I would add into that even like be as detailed as putting yourself in their shoes of like, how are they like, is this going to be awkward? Is it going to flow? Like, what are the questions that are being asked? Like you need, I don't want to say script for people are reading from a card, but like if you have staff on site that are there, that are taking people through this, you cannot just rely on somebody that you think is a good salesperson. You need to have something you're taking them through, a line of questioning, a line of engagement. Like really think about what that interaction is like, because the more that you can plan it and the more that you can make it meaningful, I guess you'd say. I don't know how I'm trying to get at that, but I think you
Well,
should
I take
really
it one
be
step
detailed.
further than that, even, and say, if you're going to have an activation in your booth, if there's something you need your attendees to go through, have professional engagers that know how to get
Yeah.
them through the booth. Because the truth is, you want your sales team to be having the sales conversations. You don't want them to be having to facilitate, oh, hey, I need you to go, I want to ask you this survey question, these survey questions, and then send you on to this activity or that activity, right? So think about how you're going to maximize your salespeople's time. Remember, you've made an investment to send those salespeople to that particular event anyway. How are you going to maximize their time so they're only having the most important conversations, and that they're able to dedicate their time and their energy to the people that are going to be purchasing from your brand. So I would say, if you can have professional engagers, and if you can't, bring people who are specifically dedicated, not your sales team, right? Bring people who are specifically dedicated to having those people walk through that booth and walk through their experience.
Nice. That was a great run of questions. I always love the questions because I think we'll end up getting to the point of really driving some value and just sparking good conversation. We got a little bit of time left here. I always like to be meaningful of everybody's time. But Christina, one thing I wanted to ask you was like, could you share an example of like successful trade show campaign that leveraged content and repurposing? Like what were some keys from that? Just an example. Maybe somebody can take hearing that and apply it to themselves or kind of, reinvent the wheel there.
Yeah, we had a veterinary client that during COVID had produced a bunch of watch to win videos because we couldn't do, in-person trade shows for during COVID. So we had watch to win videos that were part of the experience of the online trade show program. And if they watched to win, they won, some sort of a giveaway as well. And I thought what worked really well there, it was an entire microsite dedicated to this. There were educational pieces on it that they had repurposed video content that they had already produced. But we had created the microsite for it. And then you can go through and play the game, watch to win, and win a prize. They then took that particular campaign and brought it onto the trade show floor where you could, participate on site by using, a QR activated video, or going to a kiosk and viewing some of their video content there, and then doing a scratch to win and winning a prize on site as well. And they had put it onto their website afterwards to allow people to play as well. So they took the entire campaign and moved it like from during COVID to a post-COVID world, and then even beyond, and kept it as part of their sort of vernacular within their organization. I thought they did that really well. There's another
Cool.
client that we had that we created a game show for, and they used in their booth assets, they used all of their sort of existing assets that they had, and we were able to just kind of jazz it up, spruce it up, and make it a little bit more compelling for the trade show audience. And when we created the game, we just animated a lot of that content. So if you take assets that currently exist and really have a good video
Yeah.
producer, good editor, and animate a lot of that content, you can create it into something very compelling. And we made this really fun game that was vibrant and full of life, and people participated. They increased their leads exponentially. And then after the show, they were able to send out thank you messages, and that this is how you performed, and thanks for, joining us, and then continue that conversation down the line. So I thought that was really well done as well. There are lots of different ways that people do this. And I think just as you had said before, if you're thinking like a marketer, thinking about what works and how to repurpose it in different ways is so, so important.
Awesome. I got maybe one or two more questions for you here. First one is we talked a little bit about like activities going on in a booth, but like, people use the term like booth activations, right? And trying to design and like activating inside of your own booth space. And, typically it's done to capture attention. You're trying to communicate a message. I'm a huge believer in just trying to do things differently, not just for the sake of doing them differently, but being different that ties into messaging, ties into the story. What are your thoughts on these like booth activations and kind of what options people have?
I mean, the world is our oyster, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the options are endless in terms of activations. We can do kind of anything. We've created, ice skating rinks on the show floor before. So it's just a matter of, if you dream it, you can do it, depending on the resources that you have, as long as, again, that they are aligning with your objectives, that they are
Yep.
answering, audience
Mhm.
pain points, that you've created a theme that aligns with your brand, that your visuals are engaging. But again, in terms of activations, tell a story. Storytelling really does create that emotional connection with your audience. You're able to share your brand's history, your values, and the problems you solve. Did that
Do
answer
you
your question?
Yeah, but yeah, it makes me think though. Do you ever feel like B2B companies are sort of they're just afraid to do storytelling to a degree? Like they get pigeoned to being a little bit boring, a little bit this, like they don't find a way. Like it's easy if someone's like, hey, Sprite wants to exhibit and do an activation. I'm like, yeah, I can think of a million, or McDonald's, or these big consumer brands, these consumer products, because you're just playing right into the who the consumer is. You're looking for a trend, you're looking for pop culture, you're looking for it. I
Right.
don't want to make it sound easy, but I think it is easy. When you get to B2B, I think a lot of B2B companies just get afraid to like be who they are and pitch themselves and tell a story to their buyer as a person.
I do too. But at the same time, I don't think that that's not for a reason, right? Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
trying to play it safe
Yes.
because we live in a culture right now that is very quick to cancel, very quick to judge, very quick to um, criticize. And so sometimes it's just easier to play it safe. And I would say in a B2B environment, there's this expectation of being buttoned up sometimes. There's this, just like on LinkedIn, how we kind of have this filter, right? Of what we say and how we comport ourselves in a very professional, this is my professional voice, right? As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to this is just who I authentically am all the time. And so, you know, I would say yes, it's fun to be able to break free. Sometimes that's not at our disposal. Like sometimes it can't pass through legal or it can't
No.
pass through the marketing teams. Like there are just too many layers to go through to get something like that approved, that it's very challenging, I think, for event marketers to feel like they have that creative freedom to be able to create
Yeah.
something that is way outside of the box.
Yeah. We've had things that we pitch or push, and sometimes we just have good relationship with our clients that they're like, it's not even worth bringing it to where I have to take it. And you're like, wow, like, man, like sometimes
It is
I'm
such a great
crushed. I'm
idea.
like,
You're like, oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh, I'm going to
it's
do this.
fun. I know.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
good idea. It'll be different. It'll stand out. There's so many things that it will do. It'll convey your message. It tells your story, and it gets put in this box. So I would urge B2B, right? If you're the event marketer, like feel the temperature in the room when you get a chance. Like, see, is there the ability to be different, to stand out? There's some brands that just an incredible job of it. They own being different. They want to be different. But I would say I just would love to see more B2B companies push the boundaries and understand that their customers are just people. They're not businesses. Their customers are people.
I agree with that. I'd love to see it too. Let's
All right.
create change, Matt.
Yeah, we're working on it. It's part of this
Yeah.
podcast. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we're running out of time here. We still just have a great crowd here. Everybody's kind of hung around. I really appreciate it. Again, always want to be meaningful, always want to be mindful of people's time. So, Christina, my last question for you is, so sometimes I forget to finish with this, but I do love this question, which is just, what is advice to your younger self? I'm always interested in this with people.
Well, fail well and fail fast, right? You have to know failure to understand success and that it's okay to fail. I think for a long time, I, viewed failure as just that, failure, not as a means to an end. And it really is. It's a, part of the journey. But when you do fail, learn from it, learn from it quickly and move on. And then kindness counts. Empathy and kindness, I think, can sometimes be construed as weakness in business, especially as a woman in business. But the way I look at it is my purpose as a leader is to really satisfy the needs of my employees, to satisfy the needs of my clients and my clients' customers. And that cannot be done without empathy. It simply can't. Like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and understanding how they feel about things. So kindness counts. And then finally, stand up for what you believe in, even if you're the only ones standing. Right.
Those are good. I love the fail well, fail fast. I think it's good life advice, but also for event marketers. And just in this case is like, don't be afraid to put in strategy. Don't be afraid to try to go the extra mile. Don't be worried about the failure. If you fail, you then take what didn't work and you change it, and you take what worked and you keep pushing through. It is the only way to figure out the ways to find success, to garner attention, to get results, right? The kindness counts and the empathy piece. Sorry, good.
Yeah, but plan for it. Like plan for
Yeah.
your possible
Yeah.
failures, because a lot of times you do need a plan B.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then the kindness counts, and the empathy piece. I've recently been reading Never Split the Difference. Michael McMahon got me to read it. And he has a whole section in the front of the book where he's talking about negotiating skills and communicating with people. And he describes empathy to me I've heard people throw the word around,
Right.
but his definition of empathy to me is the worthwhile read of the book without question.
Okay.
The way
And
he breaks
the
it
name
down.
one more time. The name one more time.
Called Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, it was a guy who was an FBI hostage negotiator for a really long time. So he was a hostage negotiator in New York. Then he worked for the FBI. So lots of negotiation. And then he now turned those skills into a bit of a life, business, communication. Life is a lot of negotiation, but really it's just about how to approach people, how to listen to people, how to respond to people. And the empathy piece in there, I've listened a lot of it with like Brene Brown and reading other books about leadership and what empathy truly is. For some reason, Chris Voss, who's the author of this book, his breakdown of empathy. I mean, he was communicating with sociopaths, right? So it's really strange, but it's a good section. So for what you're saying, and anybody listening to this, I would recommend that book and that piece on empathy. I think it's just a life skill of understanding what empathy is and then really trying to be able to live it and exercise empathy per se. Christina, where can people find you? How are you most findable? Don't give your home address or your phone number.
I won't. You can reach me on LinkedIn. That's the best, easiest way to reach me. It's Christina Piedlow. Yep.
Varsha, the book is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And then Ish just put Christina's information in the chat. So if you would like to contact her, if you have any further questions for her, whatever it may be, you can contact her there. Hopefully you all know how to find me. And that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you for attending. We had really great attendance today, really great questions. Christina, you were excellent. It's a pleasure speaking with you and talking on this stuff, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure.
Adios, everybody. See you next time, and thank you again.